the George Floyd killing and the murder conviction of former police officer Derek Chauvin, states around the country have passed a number of new laws governing police procedures related to the use of deadly force. On this episode of The Agenda, we'll talk about where Delaware stands. I'm your host, Kerwin Gaines. We welcome Representative Frank Cooke, co-chair of the Delaware Law Enforcement Accountability Task Force, which made recommendations and reforms that were delivered to the full task force membership last week. Welcome, Representative Cooke.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
We appreciate you. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and hopes that we can mend the relationship between police and the government and making sure that we're back on the right track. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and certainly the community.
Welcome to The Agenda. So tell me, because a lot of people don't know, what is the LEATF?
The LEATF is the Law Enforcement Accountability Task Force that the DLBC, which is Delaware's Legislative Black Caucus, and the leadership of the General Assembly, including the governor, we put together due to the George Floyd situation and everything going on throughout the country, that we wanted to put together two task forces, the LETF and also the African American Task Force. And I took on the challenge as being a 30-year police officer, I took on the challenge to take on this LEATF task force and see what we can do for the community, for the people, for the state of Delaware, and and teaching them the different things, and also having the police force listen to the people in the community about their concerns with the use of force, workforce development, community policing, transparency and accountability, dealing with the Officer Bill of Rights, and also use of force.
Okay. So do you feel that this task force is successful? It's on the right track?
I would say it's successful because it was made up of the people.
Okay.
And when I say that, the different advocacy groups got a chance to hear their voices, to see exactly where we can go forward to make all these different subcommittees better, and dealing with the laws and the policies and directives in the state of Delaware, especially dealing with police departments. And you know, the state of Delaware has 48 police departments.
It's amazing. 3 counties.
3 counties.
48 police departments.
48 police departments that generally go through the COPT, Council of Police Training, okay, DPAC, and also you have to go through Chiefs of Police Council. So there's a lot of layers there that they have to follow.
So what about CALEA? How does that fall in?
And that CALEA falls in with each department getting accredited. Okay. And each department throughout the state make sure that they do. Some do and some don't, because that is a physical note on that when you get accredited or go through CALEA, which gives you a lot of rules throughout the whole country that police departments should follow, especially when it comes to policy and directives. And
all of our police departments are under this umbrella of CALEA and COPT?
Yeah, well, at least our COPT, our Council of Police Training.
Gotcha.
Which they have 4 major academies that each of these departments go to.
Right.
So you have some to go to the Delaware State Police Academy, Newcastle County Police Academy. Then you have Dover, and I think you might have University of Delaware or Newark has an academy that they go to.
So why do you think, why does this task force have a passion for you? Or
let me clear one more thing. Wilmington Police has
Wilmington Police
has their own academy. I don't want to leave them out. Very important.
So why are you on this task force? Why have you signed up? A little bit about yourself.
Well, I was a police officer for 30 years at Newcastle County Police Department. I rode a horse for 10 years. I was the liaison for domestic violence for Newcastle County for 10 years. I'm also was an executive in my FOP. At one time, I was the vice president for 6 years, and then I was on the state FOP board at one time, all the way up till I retired in 2013.
So when you're there, I see you as an expert, so to speak, in dealing with police matters. And I feel that you believe that the Delawareans are on the agenda when you're going through and making sure that these things are taken care of. Who else is on that task force?
Well, on that task force that we have a membership, and that membership is made up of those individuals that the leadership of the General Assembly, including the governor, puts together to look at these different recommendations and reforms that the subcommittees come up with. And that will consist of police, community leaders, a whole forego of different people on that task force.
So do you believe there has been true community engagement in this process? Has there been a reach out?
There has been a reach out. I went to in the subcommittee, which I had to reach out for. I went to the Latino community. I went out to the Muslim community. I looked at all the different advocacy groups that are out there looking for reform, including the United Way, Criminal Justice Council. There's just a whole many different advocacy groups that put together my subcommittee. And there was up at one time 92 people, and they cut down to 72 at the end of what we came up with our reforms. And they're from all over. The religious groups, we had them in our task force and the subcommittees. So it was like a whole round, I would say, the gumbo or the Campbell soup type of folks that were in this task force. And you know, we can't please all, and all the different advocacy groups could also still write in their reforms that they would like to see with this task force. And they did too, and they did do that.
So briefly, who else is on this task force with you? Who are the decision maker stakeholders on this task force with you?
Well, on this task force that was on here with me, like we had the use of a force committee. We had our Attorney General, Kathleen Jennings, on there heading that along with Carl Bond. We had workforce development, which was with Sharice Brunton Carr from the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, along with Reverend Frank Burton, worked for the FBI for over 30 years, and dealt with, you know, on the federal level. We had community policing and engagement, which had, if you know, Michelle Taylor from the United Way, that has different advocacy groups working on the same type of agenda. And we also had Sherry Toll, retired from Wilmington PD.
And she's also the president of
Noble, National Organization of Black Leadership and Executives. And I also had Transparency and Accountability, which I had James Ligori from the CJC, and also Ray Armstrong from the Department of Defense Services, which is a lawyer.
Okay. So are there community members on that too, or?
Yes, we had all types of community members on there. Like I said, we had people from the ACLU. We had people from, like I said, the Muslim community. We had people from Safe Communities, Hope Project. We had a whole gambit of community folks on the task force that I had to choose, and my co-chair chose to put on here.
So when we were putting this together, I'm going to be open and honest with you, Representative Cooke. We had a very hard time finding law enforcement professionals and executives that wanted to be part of this discussion here today. Unfortunately, they chose not to attend. Tell me, why do you think that is?
Well, I'm thinking that because they wanted to wait and see what came out with the recommendations or reforms. A lot of police officers from those departments, including the spokespersons for a lot of the police departments from the Chiefs of Police Council, were on here.
But it's such an important topic, sir.
Yes, and they gave their report. What they need to do is see what the community wants. This is very community oriented, and I wanted to make sure it was that they have a say, and that the police had a chance to hear. And we had quite a few on here up and down the state now, not just Newcastle County, not just Kent, Kent and Sussex.
This is statewide.
So I had to look and spread this all the way out with the 48 different police departments. And their spokesperson that was there, which is Chief Pat Ogden, you know, he speaks for all those departments because they have monthly or quarterly meetings.
I reached out to Mr. Ogden.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we are trying, and we charge any police department that is willing to have a discussion with us, please come to the agenda and have a discussion with us about the use of force in our community and in our state. We think it's time for not only a discussion, but it's time for practical matters to be evident and for folks to understand what's going on in the community. So what feedback have you received thus far?
Well, there's some feedback that you know, they didn't have some confidence in the task force.
So
And
they
that's
who? Is this from law enforcement professionals?
well,
Is this from community members?
from some community members.
Okay.
I mean, it's out there, and I respect that. You know, I look at I had 92 at one time, then I had 72 because it's called work.
Right.
So, you know, when you have a subcommittee, there's a lot of data, a lot of research that you have to do, and then you have to formulate these researches, all this data and the reform and the recommendations. And it's a hard task. I have to give it to my subcommittee. They're volunteers, they have families, they have other work that they have to do with their jobs, and they took the time out to serve the community and the constituents of the state of Delaware from Newcastle County, Kent, and Sussex. So I have to formulate all of them together to put their minds and what they feel about use of force and the task force and all the different, you know, task force agendas that they had.
So when we're talking now about members of these committees and subcommittees, some people feel that it should only be the public and they're here and we're going to come up with this. And some people say it should only be law enforcement. What do you say to that? How do you balance that? Or I can't ask you to speak on behalf of other members of the representative.
Well, I had to monitor each one of these meetings. Every meetings that we had were open, had transparency, and also recorded, and also minutes, and followed all the FOIA compliance that we had to follow. And also it was on YouTube, and you can still go back to YouTube and see every meeting that each one of these subcommittees had. So on that, we wanted to educate and teach each other. The first thing I had to make sure that we do is to listen. We have to listen to our young, to our seniors, to everyone in the state of Delaware that wanted to participate. Not everyone wanted to participate, but I wanted to make sure that we were hearers. And they taught each other from the police point of view to the community point of view.
That's essential. That's essential as we're
the
going
only
through
way
this.
It's the only way it's going to work.
That's what I want to see as a citizen of the state of Delaware, that there's not only transparency and we have everything.
And accountability.
And accountability. And we'll be sure to put up the YouTube link for everyone to be able to see and view this at their own leisure. But I think that what we have not had in our community in regards to policing is the dialogue.
Correct.
With the citizens. And everyone kind of sees where you got good guys and you have bad guys, where there's more. There's a lot of gray there. And I don't think that that's been communicated.
Yes, and that's one of the data, collecting data, sharing that data is one of the key components of this to make sure, you know, that the community hears and sees what's going on with their police departments. And I think transparency is the key, and they need to come forward. And I can tell you right now, the police department, that since this task force has been put together, are 110% behind transparency and accountability since we built this task force. They are behind it and working with the community. I want to make that clear. That includes reforms, recommendations, having review boards. I haven't got
There's been no pushback at all
about not having review boards, but they got to be done correctly.
Okay.
You know, and they have to be done right. You know, I don't want to be on a review board if I know nothing about dentistry.
Correct.
If I was going to be on a dentist review board, if I don't know anything about it, I need to learn about it and learn how it works with the components, what they do. Got to learn the policies, the directives.
And that would have been a great topic if we had a law enforcement person here. My thing would be to ask them, I understand that you can't be a dentist and work on someone's teeth. But at the same time, talking to someone who's been in that chair and is scared of the dentist, I really want to hear that. Well, maybe there's something different I can do to stop you from running out of my chair. Maybe there's some communication that could take place. And that's why I see the value of having the community there. Now, I'm not saying they have to take over the whole board, but they should at least be there and in the game. One
thing about having review boards and doing these things is that you want to make sure everybody has some type of empowerment. You can be on a board and not have any empowerment, but you got to make sure that empowerment is true, transparent, accountable, and make sure it's a chance for everybody to sit at the table. Because at the end of the day, we all have to sit at the table and get through this.
Right.
And it's something that has to be done throughout the whole America.
Right.
Throughout the United States, yes.
So what opposition, if you're at liberty to share, have you received from other members of the House or the Senate, from the General Assembly in regards to these efforts here?
So far, I've gotten tremendous help with this. They've doing like a wait and see. Let's see what these recommendations are. What are they going to be used in drafting different reforms or different laws that the DLBC has a chance to look at and review and use drafting different laws here, because don't forget, the subcommittee does not write legislation. A lot of people think this whole task force was about writing legislation. No, it is not. It's about reforms, right? And recommendations. That's what they're there for, the General Assembly to look at, to see if we can change some things, which there are going to be some big changes. They're in draft right now, but there's going to be some big changes out there that is good for the police and the community. I want to be sure that, and the community. We've got to make sure they have a say, and that's what's happening today.
So we're not, so far, have you seen a lot of partisanship back and forth in regards to this, or is everyone truly on board?
Well, I like when there's some dissension, because that means it's working.
Okay.
You know, when it's just quiet and nothing going on, that's not good.
Okay.
So we got to be, some things we're going to agree with and some we're not. And you know, sometimes some things we're going to get our foot in the door to open up other things so we can have it in later. That's going to happen. So, you know, I just got to ask my community and also the police officers to be patient, because there's a lot of peeling the onion on this. You know, you have merit rules, right? You have accreditation that you have to look at, that, you know, arbitration. There's a lot of things dealing with all this, dealing with, you know, with labor unions. You have to look at that, the FOP, Teamsters, DSTA, that was State Troopers Association. You have to look at all that.
Why do we have to look at all those things?
Well, you have contracts. Okay.
It comes down to the dollar eventually, right?
Well, not just the dollar. It comes down to the way that they do their contracts.
Okay.
You know, different things are in the contracts that come through the government, that goes to the government, that covers our police officers. And that really looks at, when you're looking at the Bill of Rights. So you have to look at all that when you're dealing with different police departments, because they're all different.
Right.
You know, and they had that.
So would you say that as a former police officer, the law coincides with the contracts, or the contracts coincide with the law?
Well, it's a little bit of both, because you have, you know, you got to look at your agreements.
Okay.
And it's just like any other contract. You know, some police contracts are for 2 years, 3 years, or maybe 4 years. And you just can't go in there and just delete their contract when you have policies and directives that you're doing. So you have to get back to the table, because if you break their collective bargaining agreement, now you have to go to PERB and you have to go to court. You know, it's just like an NBA player. He has a 4-year contract. You don't start changing things until his 3rd or maybe final year. Right. But you just can't delete stuff and just do what you want to do. So you have to look at that when you're making all these different policies, because this deals with their the way they do their job.
So the one thing that, and I've read a lot of this, I'm not the expert, you guys are, you're in chambers and you in session and you review a lot of this stuff. My question is, I haven't seen a lot when it comes to mental health, right? Dealing prior to a use of force incident, when you're encountering someone who has obvious mental health issues. Is there something in the legislation dealing with that? And also, the use of force isn't always deadly use of force. It could be just about anything, right? There's a force continuum, and where it stands on that force continuum. What type of things are we doing in regards to mental health for folks after they experience that? Or is it just, hey, that's what it is? Well,
coming from Newcastle County Police Department, I have to give it to our Colonel Von Bond that they come forward with a nice mental health piece that they deal with every day, dealing with that, with those riding along with officers when they're dealing with mental health, you know, problems in our community and dealing with people. So you have to have that component, and I'm looking at other departments, and we're working on legislation to make sure that's done statewide, especially through training. And de-escalation is one of the biggest components that we're looking at right now through the task force. That was mentioned a lot in community policing, workforce development, looking at those components. We're making sure that our police department is trained and that we train along with those in the mental health field through DHSS and other places. So in other governmental, mental
So
things that they do.
out of your 30 years of dealing with folks out on the road and in law enforcement, how much of a factor does mental health, would you say, play in any type of use of force?
Well, that's kind of hard to say.
Okay.
Because, you have to assess something.
Right.
And when you get there, you can't assess it like right like that
Right.
in seconds. You either get a call. We're hoping that people give their, because you have HIPAA problems now. Don't forget you have HIPAA violations and things that you can't do. That we get information about where we're going, what we're doing, what we're dealing with, and a lot of times, we got to make sure the pertinent information is asked through our 911 center. We got to look at that, and we got to go on and see if there's a history, and then we go from there. And then sometimes, we have to go out and one thing is protected is the safety of police officers and the public. We have to make sure that our public are safe in all of our neighborhoods, in all of our cities and counties.
Well, I hope that as you guys move forward in developing your legislation and working on your task force, is that mental health plays a role in
Major
that.
role. It does, and my subcommittees are looked into that deeply.
As well as, like you said, de-escalation.
De-escalation is very important today.
From the news sources that I found here in the state and the articles that I read, I think what could have been done differently if this was said or if this was done. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback any police officer out there, and I would never begin to do that. But I also think to myself, could we have communicated differently to the person there? But I'm not the police officer who has someone 6'6", 220 running at me. I'm not going to sit there and have a conversation. We're going to talk things out. No, we're going to act. So I understand that. That.
So you got to look at, we need continual training. We can't have police departments having training once or twice in their career, and that's it. We have to look at continual training because it changes.
I could only
constantly.
imagine. Yeah.
And we got to make sure statewide, again, there's a physical note, knowing, you get training, you have to train with a taser, train with a gun. You have to, there's a physical note on it. So you got to look at, continual training, especially with de-escalation and mental health, has to be continual throughout the career of the police officer. It really does. And they're moving, I got to give it to the police departments again, they're moving towards that, and they're doing it right now as we speak.
So does the legislation that you're proposing and the findings of your task force directly relate to the training academies and what's the curriculum of future police officers are going to?
And that's where COPT, Council of Police Training, comes in to make sure they're following the compliance of the COPT of all the departments. Even though if they're small departments or large departments, we got to make sure continually they receive this training, especially in mental health. Absolutely. And de-escalation, and also looking at the community being involved in some of this training and education. We got to look at our colleges throughout the state to be involved in this, and also our community with different advocates and people to be there to give their part in the training and helping out on de-escalation matters and mental health matters in our communities. Because one size does not fit all. No. Just remember that. There's different communities throughout the state, and we got to make sure that's done.
So briefly, before we go to break, do you have, or do you know of any times where the community comes to police training facilities to talk about the community and some of the things they experience, or is that part of it in the recruit class that they go through?
Well, I know I can't speak for all the recruit classes,
of course,
but I know Newcastle County has had some public figures come in and speak to the police academies because they have to learn culture. There's different cultures all throughout the whole state, throughout the whole United States. So you got to look at that and have them come in and speak and have their point of view pointed out so that we can learn and teach
to begin that communication process.
Communication is key. Like I said, at the end of the day, we all got to sit down at the table.
Right.
We have to, regardless of what we do. And we need to do that. And we need to do that quite frequent because, like I said, things change. But we have to involve the community. And I think that's where We all, Mr. Boat, and we can make and do things better. We always have room to do better. And we got to listen to our young, we got to listen to our old folks, you know.
That legacy information.
That legacy, you know, wise counsel.
Right.
We need to listen to that all around around the table, including police officers.
Right.
Including the judges, including attorney generals, lawyers. We all got to be at the table so we can be on one accord. We don't need to work in silos.
Right.
We need to come together. And I think a lot of times we worked in silos. But now that's been going on in America, here in this state with police shootings and use of force, we need to sit at the table and teach one another and listen to one another.
Representative Cooke, briefly, what else is on your agenda down at the Capitol in regards to policing? Well,
in the General Assembly right now, we have several bills that are in the making, in the draft right now. We're looking at Leah Board. There's some things on Officer Bill of Rights that's in draft right now. Interrogation. We have some, my bill, the mugshot bill with juveniles is coming up. We also have a lot of things coming up dealing with police reform and what's going on today. So another big thing is coming up. We're looking at expungements.
Okay.
House Bill 112 and 111. We just got passed throughout the committee of.
Very important when it comes to reentering society.
Yes, very, very, very important that people who have paid their debts to society to come out, start all over, start fresh and anew, not, you know, getting housing, getting jobs, you know, being back with their families, dealing with expungement is very, very important. And to be fair, it has to be fair to those who have paid their debts to society. And re-entry is big, very, very important, because again, things change. You know, dealing with phones, computers, jobs. You got to get people ready when they come out to join back to society and their families.
Well, Mr. Cooke, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Representative Cooke, excuse me. Thank you for having us, for coming on the show. We appreciate it, and we look forward to having you on again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the agenda.